अच्छा अच्छा। मैडम कैसी हैं? इधर आ जाओ।
The all-new which it smells amazing. The taste is
But do you see now getting close? That was a clear indication that we're struggling with the ball.
नहीं तो फोन पकड़ लेना मैं नहीं आती ये तो तरीका
Enough control with the ball. That you just want with the last. Ryan, we collect just a single. The other important effort really left a lot to be desired in terms of
शुरू नहीं हुआ है। अभी शुरू नहीं हुआ। नहीं नहीं, वही मैं कहता हूँ ना, we are an ancient civilization, तो time is मतलब मेरे लिए खास नहीं है अगर I can't hear anything. The mic, please. I can't hear anything.
जरा उसको देख लेते हैं।
हाँ
अब देखिए प्लीज।
अब आवाज आ रही है?
जी जी जी।
अब आ रही है। Excellent, excellent. Okay. Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and it is amazing to be here. It is not often that we have people with us, and therefore topics of explorations that do more than one or two things in themselves. You look at the topic today and the personality and biography of professor who will be speaking about it, you can see that this multidimensionality will be with us. We are likely to speak about matters as significant and as existential for us as climate change, but also as historical as the divide between North and South, therefore touching upon the histories of colonization and decoloniality, and matters to do with equity, therefore socioeconomics, and ultimately to do with economic system such as capitalism. So I think it is going to be a very enlightening, very powerful discourse. और आप सबकी मौजूदगी से और आप सबके क्वेश्चन आंसर से इसको और भी तकवीयत मिलेगी. So I look forward to this wonderful conversation. But before we go towards it, it is my honor to welcome you all and then to invite Dean Riaz Sheikh to be with us to formally welcome you all. Dr. Saab is the one who doesn't require any introduction here, but I will just say 2 words about him. Number one, कि ये इतनी सारी चीज़ें अपनी पर्सनैलिटी के अंदर, अपनी शख्सियत में इनके मिलाप है. बहुत अच्छे स्कॉलर हैं, एक्टिविस्ट हैं, एक ह्यूमिलिटी रखते हुए इंसान हैं. और जब भी मैंने इनसे किसी चीज़ के बारे में भी जानना चाहा, किसी और चीज़ में मदद चाहिए, ये हमेशा तैयार रहते हैं. और आई एम श्योर एज अ स्टूडेंट आप इसको महसूस भी करते होंगे और एज फैकल्टी मेंबर्स भी. सो सबसे पहले मैं डॉक्टर रियाज को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो आकर इस महफिल में कुछ वेलकम एड्रेस करें.
Thank you very much. On behalf of my faculty and Irtiqa Institute of Social Sciences, we welcome you all for this Hamza Alvi's distinguished lecture. Who was Hamza Alvi? This is more important to learn. And what is the link between this lecture and the Hamza Alvi's contribution? This is more important. Hamza Alvi was a neo-Marxist scholar who ultimately did a lot of work as far as the new colonization is start and then partition and other links. Hamza Sahab was critical of capitalist development which was taking place in Europe at that time, and ultimately he wanted a society which is based on more equity and more equality. In the current scenario, what the crisis we are facing right now, the global climate crisis, and ultimately Pakistan is among those countries. Rather, Pakistan is the 8th country which is worse affected from this issue. We have seen the worst flood in 2010, and then very recently in 2000, I think 22 as well. So one of the worst crises we are facing. But the debate is whether only some part of the world are responsible, some segment of the society are responsible, or some Western global capitalist model is responsible for it. This was the Hamza Saab's, view on this issue as well. He used to work on this issue, post-colonial societies. So we think Professor Partha Sen will speak on this issue, how this issue of rising capitalism and then global crisis of climate change is directly linked with this. So we welcome you again, and then we hand over to Professor Panjwani to further conduct the issue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. अब मैं आपको कुछ बातें इर्तिका इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ सोशल साइंसेस के बारे में कहना चाहूँगा, जिनके साथ मिलकर ये सेमिनार ऑर्गेनाइज हो रहा है. सबसे पहले तो आप नाम देखें, इर्तिका, इवोल्यूशन. एक बायोलॉजिकल इवोल्यूशन होता है जिसकी थियरी डार्विन ने दी, मगर इसका मतलब ये नहीं होता कि बायोलॉजिकली इवॉल्व्ड स्पीसीज आर आल्सो सोशली एंड इकोनॉमिकली इवॉल्व्ड. उसके लिए कॉन्शियसली मेहनत करनी पड़ती है. वन हैज टू स्ट्रगल. In fact, it is very much possible that one might be biologically human, but in terms of thought, in terms of society, one may not be very evolved. उसके लिए जो efforts करनी पड़ती है वो हम सब ने मिलके करनी पड़ती है. और ये इर्तिका का जो इंस्टीट्यूट है ये इसी के ऊपर डेडिकेटेड है, that it wants to bring about that change. हम सब जिंदगी में कुछ ना कुछ एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं. We feel pain, we feel sadness, we feel marginalized, we feel exploited. अब सवाल ये है कि इसको समझा कैसे जाए. And there are many candidates. There could be religious voices who would come to you and say कि जी इस वजह से ये चीज़ें हो रही हैं और दुनिया इस तरह चल रही. और उसके नुकसानात हमने देखे हैं जब आप रिलीजियस टर्म्स में इसको समझते. कुछ और लोग आते हैं, वो आपको शायद कैपिटलिस्ट टर्म्स में समझाएंगे, जी ये इस वजह से है क्योंकि एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप नहीं है, आपको वेल्थ क्रिएट करनी. और एक बहुत अच्छा एक और ऑल्टरनेट जो अक्सर मार्जिनलाइज हो जाता है, डेलिबरेटली मार्जिनलाइज किया जाता है, वो सोशलिस्ट थॉट होता है, जो आपको एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश करता है व्हाई द वर्ल्ड इज द वे इट इज. And I think this way of thinking is extremely important for us to have, at least be exposed to it, जो कि खुद भी हमारे मुल्क में काफ़ी कम होता है. So in that sense, इर्तिका जो काम करता है, वो एक लैंग्वेज, एक कंसेप्चुअल फ्रेमवर्क, आइडियाज़ देने की कोशिश करता है, जिसके थ्रू लोग अपने फीलिंग्स को, अपने एहसासात को जो उनको हो रहे हैं, उनको कन्वर्ट कर सके कुछ थॉट में, और फिर जब वो थॉट में कन्वर्ट होता है तो उसके बाद ही एक रिस्पॉन्सिबल एक्शन दिया जा सकता है. लेट मी से अ फ्यू फॉर्मल वर्ड्स एज वेल, क्योंकि मुझे ये दिए गए हैं ताकि आपको उसकी थोड़ी सी हिस्ट्री पता चले. Irtiqa Institute of Social Sciences is a progressive institution whose ambition is to make people socially aware, promote critical thinking, and create consciousness about social, political, and economic issues at local and international level so that they can identify narrow-minded and extremist elements and understand the mechanisms of exploitative powers. The first step towards the establishment of this institute was when Irtiqa magazine, published by progressive intellectuals and Sangat, an association of intellectuals, jointly organized a 2-day seminar under the name Irtiqa Sangat in August 1991. उसके बाद इर्तिका संगत ने एक 15-day सेमिनार मुनक्कद किया जिसका नाम उन्होंने इर्तिका रखा. और फिर यूं बात चलते चलते जो लोग मिलते रहे, बात करते रहे, उन्होंने इसको एक इर्तिका इंस्टीट्यूट फॉर सोशल साइंसेज का नाम दिया, क्योंकि उन्होंने ये महसूस किया कि देयर इज अ डायर नीड टू एस्टैब्लिश पीपल बेस्ड नॉन ऑफिशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ सोशल साइंसेज हैविंग नो लिंक विद एनी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी टू अंडरटेक ऑन इंटेलेक्चुअल एंड एजुकेशनल प्लेन द स्ट्रगल अगेंस्ट dogmatism, authoritarianism, and other vestiges of feudalism. So एक social change के साथ ये institution create किया गया. Irtiqa Institute organizes discussions, seminars, lectures, conferences on social, economic, and political, and educational and philosophical subjects, such as the one that we are having today. Part of its work is to organize 2 annual lectures. One is Hamza Wahid Memorial Lecture, which it has been organizing since 2001. And the second is Hamza Alavi Distinguished Lecture, which it has been organizing since 2002, and whose current episode is where we are participating. I hope that this gives you an understanding and orientation of why this seminar is important and why Irtiqa has organized it. To shed some more thought on that and to tell us more about Hamza Alavi and his legacy and how it is still relevant to us today, I would now request Dr. Tahira S, who is presiding today's session. Dr. Khan is a very well-known scholar. She has participated in teaching, research, and many other projects, both in the US and in Pakistan. She is a scholar of South Asian politics and history, and with a particular edge, she works on feminism and many other issues of exploitation. Her books are widely read and are part of many courses, and today it would be of good fortune for us to benefit from her thought. Dr. Saiba, may I ask?
शुक्रिया डॉक्टर फरीद, कुछ ज्यादा कह दिया आपने. कॉमरेड्स और तरक्की पसंद नौजवानों को देख के बहुत खुशी हो रही है. आप सबको सुर्ख आदाब. शायद कोई इनकलाबी लफ्ज मेरे मुंह से निकला है जिसकी कोई असर आज जो हम अचीव नहीं कर सके अपनी जिंदगी में, अपनी नौजवानी में, वो शायद आपकी नस्ल आगे लेके चले. हमजा अलवी के तारुफ के लिए कोई रवायती अंदाज में अल्फाज नहीं कहूँगी. उनकी बायोग्राफी, बायोनोट ये आपको एक क्लिक से गूगल पे मिल जाएगा. तो मेरे लिए एक चैलेंज था कि उनके काम को मैं आप तक कैसे पहुँचाऊँ 5 से 7 मिनट में, कि उन्होंने क्या ऐसा लिखा कि वो पूरी दुनिया की यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में पढ़ाई जाते हैं, लेकिन वो क्या ऐसा नहीं लिखा कि हमने उनको रिकग्नाइज ही नहीं किया. हमारी यूनिवर्सिटियों में मिनिमम मुझे नहीं याद कि मैंने कुछ पढ़ा हो पाकिस्तान में अपनी किसी क्लास में हमजा अलवी की राइटिंग, लेकिन मैंने मास्टर्स और पीएचडी प्रोग्राम में अमेरिका की यूनिवर्सिटियों में उस वक्त मुझे इस नाम का पता चला. हमजा अलवी एक स्कॉलर थे. उनका हम तो वैसे माहिर हैं अपने स्कॉलर्स को इग्नोर करने के लिए जिनको पूरी दुनिया रिकॉग्नाइज करती है, चाहे वो डॉक्टर इकबाल अहमद हो, चाहे डॉक्टर अब्दुल सलाम हो, और चाहे हमजा अलवी हो। तो आज थोड़ा सा मैं तारफ उनके जो मेन जो उनका थीसिस था, जो नजरियात थे कि वो क्यों इतने ज्यादा प्रोमिनेंट हुए अपने काम में। एज ही वाज एन इकोनॉमिस्ट, वो इकोनॉमिस्ट थे, लेकिन उन्होंने हिस्ट्री, सोशल साइंसेस, उन्होंने फेमिनिज्म, विमेन, जेंडर इश्यूज, हर एक चीज को हिस्टोरिकल मटेरियलिज्म के लेंस से देख के हम तक पहुंचाया। तो उनके जो 4 या 5 हिस्सों में मैंने उनके ख्यालात, उनकी थीसिस को उठाया है, जो मैं आप तक पहुंचा दूं। मैं 1 सेकंड अपनी ग्लासेस राइटिंग भी नहीं पहचानी जाती। उसके लिए मैं कुछ लिख के लाई हूँ ताकि मैं कुछ इधर उधर की ना कहूँ और आपको एक सॉलिड इंफॉर्मेशन दूँ। उनकी जो किसानों के साथ उन्होंने यहाँ पाकिस्तान में उनकी तालीम पैदाइश पाकिस्तान में हुई, लेकिन वो पढ़ाई के लिए इंडिया बिफोर 1947 उन्होंने पूना यूनिवर्सिटी से भी पढ़ा और उसके बाद वो पाकिस्तान वापस आ गए। बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है कि वो कायदे आज़म के बहुत करीब थे, मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना के, और उनके साथ मिलके और उनको इंस्पिरेशन दे के उनके बाद जाहिर है उनकी ज़िंदगी में स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान बनाया, उसकी बुनियाद रखी और उसमें वो एक इम्पॉर्टेंट ओहदे पे थे। लेकिन फिर वो उस ओहदे को छोड़ के वो यूके शिफ्ट हो गए, जहाँ से असल में हमें यूके बाद में शिफ्ट हुए, लेकिन पहले उन्होंने प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ का एक तजर्बा करना चाहा और वो अपनी वाइफ के साथ तंजानिया शिफ्ट हुए। ये 1950s की बात थी। तंजानिया में जाके उन्होंने लोकल फार्मर्स के साथ फार्मिंग शुरू की। वहाँ से उनका जो थीसिस पेजेंट्स के मुतालिक, किसानों के मुतालिक, जो एग्रीकल्चरल पोरेस्ट वर्कर्स थे, उनके मुतालिक उनका थीसिस डेवलप हुआ। और ये बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है, आप याद रखें, हमजा अलवी के काम के मुतालिक ये बात बहुत नुमाया है कि उन्होंने जो भी थीसिस दिए वो उनके लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस से थे। उन्होंने राइटिंग्स और उन्होंने फिलॉसफी की मोटी मोटी बुक्स के थ्रू अपने ख्यालात जो है उनको सिर्फ जांचा नहीं या उनको सामने नहीं लाए, बल्कि वो जो ग्राउंड रियलिटीज देख रहे थे उसमें से वो अपना थीसिस दे रहे थे। और किसानों के साथ रहने के बाद उन्होंने 1960 की दहाई में एक मकाला लिखा। ये सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट था उनकी राइटिंग में, पेजेंट्स एंड रेवोल्यूशन, किसान और इनकलाब। किसान और इनकलाब लेफ्ट के बैनुल अक़वामी हलकों में एक तूफान की सूरत क्रिएट कर गया। जब ये मकाला पब्लिश हुआ तो इसकी तारीफ भी हुई और इस पे तनकीद भी हुई, क्योंकि अभी तक जो इनकलाब की बात हो रही थी वो ये हो रही थी कि इंडस्ट्रियल पुअरेस्ट वर्कर जो होता है उसके थ्रू सोशलिस्ट इनकलाब आता है। चूंकि मार्क्स एक इंडस्ट्रियल सोसाइटी के दरमियान में एक नजरिया दे रहा था वर्कर्स रेवोल्यूशन का, तो यहाँ पे हमजा अलवी ने उसको चैलेंज नहीं किया। उन्होंने पोरेस्ट ऑफ द पोरेस्ट इकोनॉमी के एक और साइड को सामने लेके आए कि जो पेजेंट होता है वो भी इनकलाब के लिए उतना ही इम्पोर्टेंट है। और मजे की बात है कि चाइना में पेजेंट रेवोल्यूशन माओ ये कॉन्सेप्ट यूज कर चुका था, लेकिन जहाँ पे उन्होंने माओ से इख्तलाफ किया वो मैं आपसे शेयर करती हूँ कि ये वो वक्त था कि जब माओ ज़ेडुंग ने मार्क्स के दूसरे इनकलाबी वर्कर यानी किसान की ट्रेनिंग करके या उनको मोटिवेट करके तो इनकलाब, चाइना में इनकलाब लाए और वो ये नजरिया पूरी दुनिया में फैला। माओ के पुअर पेजेंट वाला जो थीसिस था कि पुअर पेजेंट इनकलाब लाता है, अलवी ने, हमजा अलवी ने उसको चैलेंज किया, डायरेक्टली चैलेंज नहीं किया, उन्होंने एक और थीसिस दिया कि नहीं, दरमियाने दर्जे का जो पेजेंट है वो ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट कैरेक्टर, वो रोल प्ले करता है इनकलाब को लाने के लिए। इस पर माओ ज़ेतुंग ने हमजा अलवी के इस थीसिस पे तनकीद भी की। उसके बाद 1962 में एक और आर्टिकल आता है, द बर्डन ऑफ यूएस एड। हम बड़े फेमिलियर हैं यूएस एड से और आज भी हैं। देखें, हम इस ट्रैप में जो फंसे हुए हैं वो पिछले 70 साल से वो यूएस एड का जो ट्रैप है। उन्होंने लिखा ये मकाला, वो अयूब खान के ज़माने में जदीद मुआशियाती तहकीकाती दुनिया में ये पहला आर्टिकल था जिसने अमेरिका और तीसरी दुनिया में अमेरिका की एड के कॉलोनियल असरात को पिन पॉइंट किया कि ये जो एड होती है, ये जो मदद आती है, ये क्रिपल करती है, ये जो एड है उससे तरक्की नहीं होती, डिपेंडेंसी क्रिएट होती है। और उसमें जो एड देने वाला होता है वो उस नेशन को कंट्रोल करता है। तो उन्होंने एक यूएस को एक नई कॉलोनियल पावर के तौर पे इसमें आइडेंटिफाई किया। 1966 में वो बरतानिया चले गए और फिर वहीं पे उन्होंने सारा अपना एकेडमिक काम किया और दुनिया की मशहूर यूनिवर्सिटियों में पढ़ाया। हमजा अलवी के अफकार का तीसरा मोड़ उस वक्त आया जब 1972 में उनका एक और आर्टिकल छपा, द स्टेट इन पोस्ट कॉलोनियल सोसाइटीज। तीसरी दुनिया के मुल्कों में बार बार फौज इक़्तिदार क्यों संभालती है, ये सवाल उन्होंने 1962 में उठाया, जिसको आज अब तक हम भुगत रहे हैं। और उस वक्त एक वेव आई हुई थी पूरी दुनिया में फौजी इनकलाब की। इनकलाब तो नहीं मैं उसको कहूँगी, जो फौजी बगावतें थी जिसमें फौज मुल्क की पॉलिटिकल पावर पे कब्जा करती थी। उन्होंने ये सवाल अपने लिए उठाया और उसको एक्सप्लेन किया कि नए उभरने वाले मुल्कों में बार बार फौज क्यों इक़्तिदार संभालती है। उनका थीसिस क्या था या उनका जवाब क्या था? उनका जवाब ये था कि नई बनने वाले कौमों में सियासी इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो हैं, इदारे हैं, वो कमज़ोर हैं क्योंकि उन्हें अभी आज़ादी मिली है अपने इदारे बनाने की। और लेकिन जो मिलिट्री होती है, जो आर्मी है, उसने तो कॉलोनाइजर के ज़माने में ही तरक्की कर ली थी। ब्रिटिश आर्मी जो डेवलप की इंडिया में, वो तो एक्सट्रीमली डिसिप्लिन्ड थी और वो वही आर्मी छोड़ के गए थे ना, चाहे वो इंडिया था, चाहे टर्की था, चाहे लैटिन अमेरिका के मुल्क थे। तो अब मुल्क में सिर्फ एक इदारा जो इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड है, जो स्ट्रॉन्ग है, वो आर्मी थी। इसलिए जब अभी हम तो आइन बनाने में लगे रहे, हम बदकिस्मती हमारी कि इंडिया में ये काम जल्दी हो गया और उनको एक सेट फ्रेमवर्क मिल गया। हमारे पास तो कुछ भी नहीं था। फिर उसके बाद की जो 50s की तारीख है उसके हवाले से आप देखें कि 1958 में हमारे मुल्क में पहला मार्शल लॉ लगा और उसके बाद लगता चला गया, लगता चला गया, लगता चला गया और आज तक कभी सिविलियन कपड़ों में और कभी फौजी कपड़ों में। फिर उन्होंने 2 और नए थीसिस दिए। अब ये उन्हीं का था ये जवाब। उसके बाद 2 और नए थीसिस दिए जब कराची में एथनिक राइट्स हुए 80s में। फिर उनके लिए एक चैलेंज था कि इसको मार्क्सिस्ट और न्यो मार्क्सिस्ट और हिस्टोरिकल मटेरियलिस्ट अप्रोच से कैसे इसको एक्सप्लेन करें। उन्होंने उसमें फिर जो आर्टिकल लिखा उसमें एथनिसिटी को डिफाइन किया, नेशन और नेशनहुड को डिफाइन किया और फिर उसमें भी क्लास एनालिसिस, क्लास का तजिया लेके आए। उनका जो एथनिसिटी के मुतालिक आइडिया था वो इस आर्टिकल में आया और ये नज़रिया फिर एक नया नज़रिया था। इससे पहले एथनिक प्रॉब्लम को इस तरह से नहीं देखा गया और पाकिस्तान ने भी एथनिक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को पहली दफ़ा शहर में और एक बड़े शहर में जिस तरह से फेस किया اس کے لیے کوئی ایکڈیمک ایکسپلینیشن نہیں تھی ہمارے اسکالرس کے پاس. تو یہاں پہ آ کے حمزہ الوی نے اس کو ایکسپلین کیا. ان کی فکری خدمات کا چوتھا موڑ اس وقت آیا جب انہوں نے پاکستان میں ریلیجس ایکسٹریمزم پہ بات کی. اب پھر ایک اور چیلنج آ گیا تھا, ادھر ایتھنسٹی تھی, اس سے پاورٹی, اس سے پہلے پاورٹی تھی, اس سے پہلے ملٹری رول تھا. اب اگلا جو چیلنج آیا وہ افغان وار, سوویت یونین اینڈ افغانستان اور پوری دنیا آ کے ہماری جنگ لڑ رہی تھی, یعنی مسلمانوں کی جنگ افغانستان میں لڑی جا رہی تھی. 1980s کی میں بات کر رہی ہوں. اور ریلیجس ایکسٹریمزم جس طرح سے بڑا, ہمارے نیبر میں ایک طرح کا اسلام آ گیا, دوسری طرف دوسرا اسلام لانے کے لیے اسٹرگل ہو رہی تھی. اس مذہبی انتہا پسندی کو بھی انہوں نے اس کی جڑیں تلاش کی, اس لیے ان کا آرٹیکل زیادہ امپورٹنٹ ہوا. یعنی حمزہ الوی پرومیننٹ کچھ یہ تھیسس تھے جن کی وجہ سے انٹرنیشنل بھی ہو رہے تھے اور نیشنل پالیٹکس اکیڈیمیا میں بھی. انہوں نے یہ مذہبی انتہا پسندی کی تاریخ کے ذریعے اس کو جوڑا, اس کی جڑیں تلاش کی خلافت موومنٹ میں جو انڈیا میں ہوئی تھی 1919 سے لے کے 1926 تک. یعنی وہ پورا ایک صدی پیچھے لے کے گئے اور انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ کوئی نئی چیز نہیں ہے ریلیجس ایکسٹریمزم, اس کو ہوا دینے کے لیے قوتیں نہیں ہیں, لیکن یہ جڑیں یہاں پہ تھیں اور ان کی بنیاد پہلے رکھی جا چکی تھی. ان کے نظریات اور علمی خدمات پوری دنیا کے حلقوں میں پڑھائے جاتے ہیں. یہ صرف چند ایک تھیسس تھے ان کے, میں احاطہ نہیں کر سکتی. جس طرح سے یونیک انداز میں انہوں نے تاریخ کو انٹرپریٹ کیا, اکانومی کو اور تاریخ کو کمبائن کر کے جو ایکسپلینیشنز دیں, یہ مین پوائنٹس میں آپ کے سامنے یعنی آج کی نوجوان نسل کے سامنے رکھنا چاہتی تھی, تاکہ یہ آپ کو حمزہ الوی ایک پرسنالٹی کے طور پہ نہیں, ایک ایکڈیمک سیلیبریٹی کے طور پہ نہیں, ایک اسکالر کے طور پہ, ایک تھنکر اور فلاسفر کے طور پہ آپ کو ان کی اہمیت کا پتہ چلے, تاکہ آپ بھی سرچ کریں. آپ بھی جب کوئی پیپر لکھ رہے ہیں تو آپ حمزہ الوی کے آرٹیکل کو سرچ کریں یا ان کی کتاب کو, تو آپ کے ذہن میں کچھ باتیں آئیں کہ انہوں نے کن کن پوائنٹ پہ لکھا اور وہ کتنی ریلیونٹ ہے آج بھی ہماری زندگی سے. ان کی وفات کے آج اب 21 سال ہو گئے, اس کے بعد بھی مطلب ان کا جو لکھا ہوا ہے وہ ایسا لگتا ہے کہ جیسے ابھی وہ آج کے حالات میں لکھ رہے ہیں. میں نے پہلے ذکر کیا, چاہے اقبال احمد ہوں یا حمزہ الوی یا ڈاکٹر عبدالسلام, ہم ان کے کام, اسپیشلی حمزہ الوی کے کام کی وجہ سے میں چاہ رہی ہوں کہ جو نوجوان نسل ہے ان کو پہچانے اور ان کو پاکستان میں بھی اپریشیٹ کریں, اور ان کو پاکستان میں بھی کورسز میں ان کے آپ کی ریسرچ میں ان کے تھیسس کو اجاگر کرے. انہوں نے اپنی تحریروں میں مارکسزم کا نچوڑ واضح کیا. ایز سچ کوئی مارکسسٹ لیبل لگا کے نہیں لکھا, کلیم نہیں کیا, لیکن وہ جو ڈرا کر رہے تھے جس ڈسپلن سے, وہ مارکسزم تھا, نیو مارکسزم تھا. مارکسسٹ نظریات کو لیکن ڈفرینٹ اس طرح ہوئے وہ کہ انہوں نے ان کو زمینی حقائق سے جوڑا. یعنی اگر مارکس نے 150 سال پہلے لکھا تھا انڈسٹریل ریولوشن کے حوالے سے, مزدور کی ایکسپلائٹیشن کے حوالے تھے, تو انہوں نے تنزانیہ میں جا کے مزدوروں کسانوں کے درمیان کام کر کے زندگی گزار کے انہوں نے وہ جو مڈل کلاس, جو مڈ لیول کا کسان تھا, اس کی اہمیت انقلاب میں اور پورسٹ اس کی کسان کی اہمیت کو سامنے لے کے آئی. یعنی وہ لیوڈ ایکسپیرینس سے بات کر رہے تھے, جو وہ لکھ رہے تھے وہ تھا جو وہ دیکھ رہے تھے, اس کو وہ تھیورائز کر رہے تھے. ایک دفعہ انہوں نے ڈاکٹر مبارک علی کو کہا کہ مارکسزم کو ایک ٹول آف انالیسس کے ساتھ میں کے طور پہ میں یوز کرتا ہوں, اور اس کو اپلائی کرنا جو ہے وہ ایکٹیوسٹ کا کام ہے. اور یہ ٹول آف انالیسس جو ہے, ہسٹوریکل میٹیریلسٹ, کلاس انالیسس, مارکسسٹ انالیسس, یہ ہمیں ہیلپ تو کرتا ہے بہت زیادہ تاریخ کو سمجھنے کے لیے, اکنامکس کو سمجھنے کے لیے, سوشیولوجی, لیکن پولیٹیکل سائنس کے کچھ ایسی گنجلیں ہیں, کچھ ایسے مسائل ہیں جہاں پہ مارکسزم اس کو ایکسپلین نہیں کر پاتا. میرا پوائنٹ کہنے کا یہ ہے کہ وہ کوئی بلائنڈ فالوور نہیں تھے ایک آئیڈیالوجی کے. وہ کریٹیکلی دیکھ رہے تھے, وہ کریٹیکلی اس کو اپنی ریالٹیز کے ساتھ جوڑ کے ایکسپلین کر رہے تھے. میرا اپنا تعارف حمزہ علوی کی تحریروں سے امریکن یونیورسٹی میں ہوا. جب میں پی ایچ ڈی کرنے کے لیے گئی 1988 سے 1990 میں, وہ آلریڈی وہاں پہ ایز اے وزٹنگ فیکلٹی 2 سال پڑھا کے گئے تھے. واپس وہ یونیورسٹی آف مانچسٹر چلے گئے. جب تک میں ماسٹر یہاں سے کر کے گئی تھی, ایم فل کر کے گئی تھی پاکستان کی ایک نامور یونیورسٹی سے, لیکن مجھے حمزہ علوی کا نہیں پتا تھا, نہ ان کی رائٹنگز کا پتا تھا. وہاں پہ جا کے ایک نام سننے کو ملا کہ ایک پاکستانی اسکالر آئے تھے, پچھلے سیمیسٹر میں ہی وہ واپس گئے ہیں, اور پھر ہر کورس میں, ہر کلاس میں کہیں نہ کہیں ان کا کوئی نہ کوئی آرٹیکل اسائنڈ ہوتا تھا. تو میں نے بھی ان کو جاننا شروع کیا. میری بدقسمتی تھی کہ وہ جب آخری سیمیسٹر پڑھا کے گئے ہیں تو میں اس کے بعد والے سیمیسٹر میں وہاں گئی تو مجھے ان سے پڑھنے کا موقع نہیں ملا. میری پہلی ملاقات حمزہ علوی سے ارتقا کے لیکچر ہال میں ہوئی, گلشن میں جو ان کا لیکچر ہال ہے. اب مجھے ایگزیکٹلی یاد نہیں ہے کہ 2000 یا 2001 یا 2 میں تھے وہ وہاں پہ, کیونکہ یہ وہ ٹائم تھا 9/11 کے بعد کا ٹائم تھا, اور انہوں نے ریلیجس ایکسٹریمزم پہ لیکچر دیا تھا. کوئی فارمل اس کا میرا نہیں خیال ہے کہ پبلش ہوا ہے, لیکن میں ان کو بڑے تجسس سے اور ایک جس کو کہتے ہیں نا اشتیاق سے ان کی باتیں سن رہی تھی کہ آپ کو تو میں وہاں پہ آپ کے مقالے پڑھ کے آپ کو جانا ہے, اور آج آپ ایک اور یہی وہ ٹائم تھا جب وہ مذہبی انتہا پسندی کو ان کا جو تھیسس تھا ان کا وہ ڈیولپ ہونا شروع ہوا تھا, اسپیشلی 9/11 کے بعد. اور آخری دفعہ یہ عزت ملی 2001 میں ان کے ساتھ سٹیج شیئر کرنے کا اتفاق اعزاز ملا, جب آکسفورڈ یونیورسٹی پریس نے ایک کتاب ان کو ڈیڈیکیٹ کی, اور وہ سٹیج پہ تھے, انہوں نے صدارت کی تھی, اور فخر الدین جی ابراہیم بھی ان کے ساتھ وہاں پہ تھی. تو وہ ڈیڈیکیٹ کی ہوئی تھی کتاب, پوسٹ کلونیل اسٹیٹ اینڈ سوشل ٹرانسفارمیشن ان انڈیا اینڈ پاکستان. اس میں ان کے تھیسس سے ریلیٹڈ آرٹیکلس چھپے تھے, اور پھر 2003 میں ان کی وفات ہوئی. آج کی نسل کے لیے میرا یہ پیغام ہے کہ حمزہ علوی ایک ایکیڈیمک لیجنڈ تھے, وہ ایک ٹاورنگ شخصیت ہیں, اور وہ لیجنڈ اور ٹاورنگ شخصیت ایکیڈیمکلی رہیں گے. ان کو پہچانیں, ان کے خیالات کو سمجھیں, اور ان کے خیالات کو سمجھ کر اس کو اپنی ریالٹیز, اپنے ارد گرد کے ماحول کے ساتھ جوڑ کے سمجھنے کی کوشش کریں گے تو آپ کے لیے چیزیں آسان ہو جائیں گی. وہ 21 سال پہلے دنیا سے چلے گئے. ان 21 سالوں میں آپ جس حالات میں بڑے ہوئے ہیں, جو کنڈیشنز آپ کے ارد گرد ہیں, وہ نئے چیلنجز ہیں, نئی کنڈیشنز ہیں, نئی مشکلات ہیں. اس کے اندر آپ نے ایک ٹول آف انالیسس کے طور پہ حمزہ علوی کی رائٹنگ سے اگر کوئی ہیلپ لینی ہے تو آپ کو وہ ضرور ملے گی. بہت شکریہ.
تھینک یو ویری مچ. میرا خیال ہے تالیوں نے بھی آپ کو بتایا کہ آپ نے ایک سمندر کو کوزے میں بند کرنے کی کامیاب کوشش کی ہے, اور مجھے یقین ہے کہ آپ کی باتوں سے جو یہاں ہمارے اسٹوڈنٹس موجود ہیں ان کا اشتیاق اور ان کا تجسس ڈاکٹر حمزہ علوی کو پڑھنے کا بڑھ گیا ہوگا, اور آئی ایم شیور کہ یہ ہم ان کی اپنی تحریروں میں دیکھیں گے. یہاں میں یہ کہتا چلوں کہ زیبسٹ کا ایک خاص رشتہ ہے حمزہ علوی صاحب سے, کیونکہ آپ کے جو ڈین ہیں ریاض شیخ صاحب, انہوں نے ان کی کافی کتابیں ان کا ترجمہ کیا ہے. لہٰذا اگر آپ سوچیں تو زیبسٹ اور حمزہ علوی کا ایک لیوڈ ریلیشن شپ ہے جو آپ کے پاس موجود ہے. لیٹس ناؤ موو ٹو دی particular event for which this gathering has been conveyed. It is my honor and pleasure to now introduce Professor Partha Sen formally to you all, and then to request him to present his paper. Professor Partha Sen is a distinguished economist with a PhD from the London School of Economics. He served as a professor at the Delhi School of Economics from 1996 to 2011, where he also held key leadership positions. Dr. Sen has held full-time academic appointments at renowned institutions such as the University of Illinois, the London School of Economics, and the University of Bristol. He has also been a visiting faculty member at several prestigious universities, including the University of Michigan, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, National University of Singapore, Nanyang Technological University, and City University of Hong Kong. An accomplished scholar, Dr. Sen's research spans macroeconomics, international economics, and environmental economics. His work has been published in leading journals, including the International Economic Review, Journal of Public Economics, Journal of International Economics, and many others. Dr. Sen has contributed to global economic research through many of his writings, and throughout his career, he has ensured that his knowledge is used not only to understand, but also to speak on behalf of those who are marginalized and exploited. It is our pleasure to have him with us. He wanted to be with us in person. In fact, he made all the efforts, but many economic, geopolitical, and other considerations did not help. But we hope that very soon there will be an occasion that he will join us in person. But we are very grateful for his time. And now, without taking further coming in between you and him, I would now like to request him to please honor us by delivering the 23rd Hamza Alavi Distinguished Lecture for 2024.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farid and Dr. Tahira, for the introductory remarks. Actually, it was, I almost wish that, I was not speaking today, and Dr. Tahira could continue with her speech. But I think whatever little I knew of Hamza Alavi before coming here today, and I'd read him, not as extensively as Dr. Tahira did, but and what really struck me was that here was a scholar who took a problem and tried to fit it into his understanding of Marxism, but he was not hidebound by any kind of dogmatism, and that's really the quality that attracted me to him. That you talk about the colonial mode of production, you talk about the army, you talk about the role of peasantry. These are things that what are somewhat flippantly described as thinking outside the box, but thinking outside the box is what he did, and notwithstanding the fact that maybe he is not given as much recognition as is due, but those of us who have been not left untouched by his thinking, I think it's very important for us to remember him and to try and pass on the message to the future generations. So I am very grateful that I was invited by Irtiqa Institute to give this lecture named after Hamza Alavi. Actually, I chose to do that. So let me just go back a little bit on how I came to be here. So the person who actually kick-started this entire process, my friend who's sitting there, Shima Kirmani. Shima, I first met now 25 years ago in Delhi. She was in Delhi, and you know, we really hit it off well. And soon she introduced me to Kaleem Durrani, and we also really, you know, got on really well. So I didn't know that at some stage Kaleem would be my host here and would be cracking the whip, telling me, do this, don't do that. And but you know, Shima and Kaleem, if they tell you to do something, you try and do that to the best of your ability. Not so long ago, Shima once sent a message saying that she was going to host some Afghan women and she wanted me to be part of the discussion. So I looked at her, you know, with some alarm that
आवाज से तुम्हें खुला गले बाहर आंदा पे क्या
Afghan women and me. But yes, so she said yes.
अच्छा ये पीछे क्या है लूने खराब लगते खराब हल कैसा भाई
You better come and so it was really a very enlightening experience for me. So and
ये
similarly,
खराब हल
um, Kaleem, and once I accepted it, and I was
क्यों
going
नहीं करते लेवन पर जाने
fly to Karachi to be there with you. He said that, oh, we want the text of your lecture written up. Now, you know, I'm someone who takes a long time to write up things. So you see a very imperfect text in front of you with no footnotes. So, you know, and there are things that I have copied and pasted, which I should be, you know, in a subsequent version, I will be giving credit where it's due. So, but Kaleem also said that you better give the lecture in Urdu/Hindi. And for once, you know, I said, no, that's not possible. I can deliver a political speech, you know, in Urdu, Hindi. It used to be called Hindui before it became Urdu, Rekhta, and Hindi separately. So I grew up in Delhi. I'm actually a Bengali by birth, but but I speak Urdu after a fashion. So so I'm happy to converse in that, but to give an academic lecture in Urdu is quite impossible. So you know, that is the first time I defied him. Okay, so here I am, Irtiqa Institute. I am really grateful to them because it gave me a window into what the Institute is doing, to go through some of their papers, who are the people involved with it, and to meet some people virtually. So I'm really grateful because I think as important as the fact that this is Hamza Alavi Memorial Lecture and what I'm going to talk about, you know, for what it's worth, it's important to keep the dialogue between our next door neighbors going. There is much in terms of politics which will come in the way, but what we need to do is to keep it going. For 1 year and a half, I was the Dean of Economics at South Asian University. And the only reason why I went to South Asian University was that it would give me an opportunity to go to Pakistan and Bangladesh. These were, and Sri Lanka. You know, I treat all of them as equal partners. Nepal, of course, there is some traffic from Nepal to Indian academia, so that was not. So I did go to Bangladesh, but never made it to Pakistan. So that's an abiding regret that I have in my life. So it is important that we talk to each other. The visa system makes it not so easy. And if there are no direct flights, it also makes it very expensive. But it is very important that intellectual discussions take place and ideas are exchanged. And Hamza Alavi is a very good example to start off this process with. So let me then come to today's topic. And climate change has been fashionable as a discussion focal point in the last 2 or 3 decades. And it's very clear if we look around us that climate change is occurring. Okay, the mean temperature in the world has been going up. If I do some work on Indian agriculture, and the cultivation of rice in India, and one of the big problems that arises when you have a data set which goes back about 80 years is the fact that the mean temperature is rising. So the world is getting hotter. Okay, that's the first thing. But it's climate change. It's not global warming itself. It is climate change, meaning that there are other things that are happening. And what is that? That is various seasons are becoming less predictable. In India, we never used in North India, we never used to have rain in February and March. Now, routinely, you can have a deluge in February and March. Okay, and we would never have rains after the closure of the formal monsoon, but now October, November could also have large amounts of rain. And what you experienced in Pakistan, and I have written about that a little bit, because I'll come back to that when I talk about how we should tackle climate change, is this unprecedented flood that you had in 2022, if I recall right, that in various areas of Pakistan where rainfall was really, they were really like a desert, suddenly had ankle deep water, and the ecology of the place does not know how to cope with that. So climate change is definitely taking place. Okay, now the president-elect of the US will tell you that there's no climate change, and even if there is climate change, it's got nothing to do with all the things that scientists tell you cause climate change, which is the burning of fossil fuels, etc. But these are what science tells us we have to accept. And what we have to do as social scientists is to try and put a structure around that. It is not my job to question science unless they're giving very dicey dicey suggestions. So therefore we have the climate change is taking place, and an integral part of that is global warming. Okay, so what is global warming? Let me spend some time on this, because I think in the text that you might have got, I haven't discussed that at length. So there are greenhouse gases, and I have in the text I have alluded to 2 of them, which is what I need to deal with. So I have carbon dioxide and methane. But there are others also, N2O and various carbon CFCs, fluorocarbons. But there is also something that
more bandwidth. And also a request to the audience here to make sure that when the professor is participating in speaking, we give him the due respect that is required.
Sorry about that. If you needed to be reminded that we are in the, so yes. So what greenhouse gases do is they stop the sun's heat from being reflected away from the Earth's surface at night. Okay, so up to a point, this is desirable, because if there were no greenhouse gases, if all of the sun's heat was reflected back away from the Earth, then life would be impossible. It would be very, very cold, and life would be impossible on this planet. So up to a point, greenhouse gases are a good thing. But what has happened since the Industrial Revolution, and whatever is the date you want to put, the start of the Industrial Revolution, 1760, is when I was a student. That's what they used to say. So 1760 onwards, what happened was that a lot of carbon dioxide was generated in the process of the new techniques of production that took over as part of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so and these the increased carbon dioxide, slowly but surely, because initially the countries involved were very small, and the manufacturing activity spread to the rest of the world over a period of time. But slowly but surely, you notice that from the middle of the 18th century, the world starts to warm up a little. Okay, and this is directly linked to carbon dioxide. So the two major gases that I will be concerned with today are carbon dioxide and methane, because both of them have also featured in the international discussion on climate change. So carbon dioxide comes out of burning fossil fuel. What are fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are fuels that we get out of from under the ground. So it used to be coal mainly, but now it's also petroleum, gas, natural gas, etc. So those are fossil fuels. And what the other global the greenhouse gas that we are concerned with is methane, and methane comes out of agriculture. A lot of it comes out of agriculture. So there's a lot of pressure on third world countries to curb the use of fertilizers, etc. And it also comes out of production of petroleum. So, if you ever overfly Iraq on your way to Europe, for instance, you will find that, and during the course of the night, a lot of these oil wells are burning. There are flares coming out, and those are methane is being generated there. So methane is agriculture and petroleum production, and carbon dioxide is pervasive. Our cars emit carbon dioxide, our factories emit carbon dioxide, electricity generation is carbon dioxide, transportation, almost every form, not just cars, is carbon dioxide, unless we make big changes. So these are the things that we talk about. Okay, so let me give you a brief summary of the message, and then I will try and get into some of the details. The brief summary of the message is that when the Industrial Revolution took place, we were most of the third world was colonized. Okay. Now, it's important for the younger generation to know this, that colonies have existed since times immemorial. So, colonization was not new. The Greeks colonized, the ancient Egyptians colonized, and the Turks colonized, and so and the Europeans. Of course, the Europeans were the big ones. They also had colonies. The Portuguese, the Spanish. What the Industrial Revolution did was it changed the nature of colonialism. It made it sort of a different thing. Partly, slavery has been known as a part of colonization since times immemorial. Huh? So, in India and Pakistan, when I say India, I mean undivided India, we have been ruled by the slave dynasty. So slavery has been known for a long time. What the Industrial Revolution did with new technology, with steamships, and with inputs growing in far away places, was it gave a different kind of a structure to slavery. Okay, so just one anecdote, and I will move on. When the British first came to India, every British person wanted to live like a nabob, as they said, like a nawab. Huh? So they would get on an elephant, they would have 4 or 5 wives, and they would go around Delhi, pretending to be a successor regime of the Mughals. But once the steamship came, then they were not confined to Delhi anymore. Their wives started to come. And so all this business of, trying to emulate the Mughals, there were other reasons, of course, but racism became more entrenched partly because of technology. Okay, I'm saying this not completely seriously, but it's certainly a fact that where you might have lived trying to emulate what you thought was a superior culture, you now started looking down at them. So both India, and again I say India meaning the subcontinent, and China, which were rich countries, the richest among the world, at the beginning of the 1700s, within 100 years had collapsed down. And what they also did was the colonial power started looking down at us, and that was the new form of colonialism, partly fed by the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so now Industrial Revolution, no doubt, did raised productivity, gave new technology which the world was not aware of till then, and it changed the entire production structure, okay, the mode of production completely. I mean, if there was incipient capitalism before the Industrial Revolution, now it was proper industrial capitalism. And it was not industrial capitalism confined to the boundaries of the industrial power. It, by its very nature, sought markets outside it, the home country, and it also sought raw materials outside the home country. So, I give some examples inside. Initially, in India, the British came and destroyed all the agrarian structure that there was, and they forced the peasantry to cultivate indigo. Indigo was a dye, a natural dye used for in dyeing textiles. But very soon, some other forms of dye, artificial dyes came on the scene, and then they had lost interest in indigo cultivation. But other cultivation, cotton, for instance, in the Americas, in India, in Egypt, continued for a long time. and this is completely determined by the ease of transportation and the colonial structure of production and jute. You know, if you're going to transport large amounts of goods, you needed some cheap but durable packing material, and jute definitely fitted the bill. So the Indian subcontinent has provided all these, the agricultural sector got linked into the imperial production structure. And what has also been, and any historian will tell you of the subcontinent, what this resulted in was neglecting food grain production. And so after the coming of the British, there were successive famines, you know, the 18th century, and it continued right into the 20th century. You know, the Bengal famine of 1943 killed more people than most other famines, because Britain was sitting on a mountain of food grains, but it never allowed food grain distribution, and people just died on the streets of Calcutta and in the rural areas in Bengal. So the agrarian structure was transformed by colonialism. The industrial structure was transformed. Indian textiles had a huge market in Europe, which was literally decimated, you know, willfully decimated. It did not disappear on its own. And so colonialism played havoc with the Indian product and the structure of production in the colonies. So it was, so there are 2 points to remember here, that that colonialism played havoc with the production structure, one, and that colonialism now was very different. It was not doing so because there was a tyrant sitting somewhere. The very nature of production now required this to be done. So those are the things to remember. Okay, so now let's go to climate change. That the production structure in Europe, starting off with Great Britain, and slowly it goes to the rest of Europe. And there's a first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution. So second industrial revolution almost brings us to the beginning of the 20th century, by which time science is very well established in industry. So the first industrial revolution is steam replacing water and wind. So windmills are being replaced by steam mills. And they are much more productive. Factories, what Charles Dickens made famous, factories which were really sweatshops producing for larger markets. Over time, there was a trickle-down effect. Over time, the working classes also gained in these countries, but we were left out. We the colonized subjects, were completely left out. So for the purposes of this discussion, what was relevant was that unforeseen quantities of carbon, when I say carbon, I mean carbon dioxide, was put into the atmosphere, which slowly but surely caused global warming. Okay, so let me also, some of you might be a little curious, that, you know, I am interested in global warming. A lot of these things, you know, if production structures, you know, if you have a factory in a very densely populated part of the country, you will also have a lot of local pollution. So it's impossible to breathe near a factory. But what I am interested in is the durable change in the climate. So I'm not interested. So, I mean, somewhere in the text, I hope I've given this example that carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, cars often, diesel emits carbon monoxide, whereas petrol emits carbon dioxide. So carbon monoxide does not have the global warming potential. Carbon dioxide has it, not carbon monoxide. So if you are just concerned with climate change, you would say, oh, everything should be diesel. But we know that diesel, makes life very impossible to live in, not because it causes climate change, but because of the local pollution that it creates. Okay, so so those are things to remember. Now, what happens is that the European powers very soon joined by the US, and very soon also joined by Japan, and later on a little bit in Latin America, because in Latin America, one has to remember, around the First World War, Argentina was among the top 10 industrial powers of the world. So also Latin America, they emitted a lot of carbon, which contributed to climate change. Now, we did not have the means. We were prevented from industrializing. I mean, in the Indian subcontinent, the first iron and steel plant was in 1918, because the British needed something here, and they were scared that the Germans would sink their ships if it was if it was transported from Europe. So therefore, very unwillingly, they allowed some steel mills to be set up in India. But by and large, the bulk of the well, not the bulk, almost the entire amount of the carbon production was in the advanced capitalist countries, by which I mean it is Europe and the US, and later maybe a little bit from Japan. So then over time, some of these countries, some of our countries got decolonized. India and Pakistan were among the first countries to be decolonized. And then Africa came in the 1950s, Burma also 1948, I think. And so we were decolonized. So at that time, what was the story? The story was, okay, we are decolonized, we are independent. The world is still controlled by the colonial powers, but to the extent that we are decolonized, that we can take the day-to-day decisions we can take on our own. We can industrialize, and we could industrialize the way they had industrialized. Of course, here Hamza Alavi is very relevant, because why did different countries grow differently? Why did different countries have different kinds of regimes? So therefore, but as a matter of sort of broad brush treatment, I could say that yes, you were free to industrialize, and if you were able to industrialize, and that's fine. Now, over time, as countries industrialized, and India and China are two big industrial powers relatively in the world. Not necessarily in per capita terms, although China is there, but India is not there. So therefore, we also started contributing to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And in 1992, if I take that as a starting point, at the Rio summit, people said, no, the world is becoming too hot to live in. You have to do something about controlling emissions. Okay. So, and I'll come to that in a minute. At this point, because I'm not reading from a text, I might forget that there are three effects of climate change that one has to bear in mind. One is the creation of more carbon in the atmosphere, so new emissions. Okay. Now, that is something that the developed capitalist countries want to focus on. But the other two are also important. One, but there's not much discussion, and I discussed this in the paper. The other two are adaptation and loss and damage. So adaptation means that, okay, suppose suppose the rivers are changing course because of a lot of rain, untimely rain. Maybe we should build some embankments to prevent flooding every year. Okay, so that is adaptation. Climate change is here, adapt to that. And loss and damage, you'll never be able to adapt properly. So if, what happened to Pakistan in 2022 was unprecedented loss unleashed on the poorest section of the population. So loss and damage someone has to find the means to compensate us for that. So the dividing line between the colonial powers and today's leading industrial powers and the colonies is that they want you to emphasize limiting emissions. Okay, so Indian industry, they have not much problem with, as long as it is cutting edge. It does not put too much by way of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Similarly, China. Okay, I've discussed some of these things in a subsequent section. So decolonization started in the 1940s, 50s, and by the time the 1990s come along, already we hear murmurs that you cannot industrialize like that because it's putting too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Remember that we, the colonized, did not have the power to say that to them when they were putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, because we had no vote. But today, they still control the purse strings and the command centers of the world. So therefore, today they are saying, no, this is not okay. Your iron and steel, your cement has too much carbon in it. We cannot allow that. Then you say that, okay, that's only part of the thing. What about adaptation? Is there fund for adaptation? The answer is, we'll think about it. And loss and damage, well, that's almost not there. So let me just give you what happened 2 weeks ago in Baku, in Azerbaijan. There was a COP29 meeting where the developing countries wanted $1 trillion, and there's a history to that. I'm coming to that, but $1 trillion every year for adaptation and loss and damage. And what the developed countries promised was not just them, but they want to bring in Pakistan, they want to bring in China, they want to bring in India, they want to bring in other countries. They've promised 300 billion. So, less than 1/3 of what is required, and that too from 2035, 10 years from now. So no money is forthcoming on the pressing needs of what the climate change has done to the third world countries. All they are concerned with is that you should not put more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by your production structure, because that would affect them directly. Okay, they are not coughing up money for us to for the climate damage that they have already inflicted on us, but they want us not to industrialize the way they industrialized. So they got rich, but once we started to use similar technologies, they're saying, no, you can't do that. And of course, all that is quite asymmetric. So, let me just go back to this, and then let me come back to one more item, because I would like to leave some time for questions and answers. So, in 1997, there was the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol at least recognized the fact, okay, and this is interesting, at least recognized the fact and wanted to implement it to say that there is one class of countries which have created the problem, and the rest of the world hasn't created this problem. So India and China did not create the problem. So therefore, they were given more leeway in generating carbon emissions, whereas those countries which were the first movers, the original colonial countries, were asked to tighten their emissions much more. So at least that was a recognition that some countries created the problem, some countries did not. By the time the Kyoto Protocol is ratified in 2005, most countries had said that we are not going to support it. The US was an original signatory, but it never ratified it. Japan also moved out. Australia moved out. So all the advanced capitalist countries with they say chor ki dadi mein tinka, so they just left it and ran. So they tried to get some other mechanism going where they were not held directly responsible, and everyone, quote unquote, pitched in. So everyone was going to pitch in, everyone was going to make some cuts. And so that is the Paris Agreement of 2015. And here I must say that, China did not do enough to oppose this, because I think that was really not in the interest of the poorer countries. And if China had also been steadfast in its support for the third world, I don't think that advanced countries could have rammed that through. But that's my view. So that other people could have different views on that. So therefore, now what we have are each country gives a sort of nationally determined, the objective of emissions. So the US, of course, under Donald Trump, that might just, I might be talking about a completely something that is dead. But the European Union gives some kind of an emission cut plan. India gives something, and then you say that, okay, this is what you had promised. How well have you performed on this? There are two things. One is this: Paris talked about cutting emissions. So everyone now is on the same at the same level, notwithstanding the fact that the Europeans gained from industrialization, and India and China, whatever they might be doing now, or Pakistan or other countries which have industrial plans, did not do anything to create the problem. But we are now on this, at the same level. So as a small token of appreciation within quotation marks, and the industrial countries promised to transfer 100 billion to the poorer countries for and also some technology. And that was going to be it. Now, in the paper, I give you a lot of description that almost no country, and if you think of the Japanese as being very good with providing foreign aid, they haven't met the target. In all developed countries are supposed to give 7%, 0.7% of their, so less, 0.7% of and their gross national income as overseas development assistance, and the climate aid is over and above that, okay? And almost no country, Norway, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, these are really small countries. These are the only countries which have actually met their targets. So they have been very, very remiss in meeting the targets that they have set for themselves. We haven't set them, they have set for themselves, okay? So, so that's a huge problem. Now, in passing, again, it's described at length in the paper that what is important, and this came up in Baku also, and just now, concluded COP29 summit, that what constitutes climate finance. Now, from the poorer countries' perspective, from Pakistan has no foreign exchange, okay? So if you gave Pakistan climate aid, which was repayable in 5 years' time, that's as good as not giving it, because Pakistan doesn't have the means to repay it. So poorer countries have suffered from COVID, and India is not that poor, although India is also not as rich as we like to believe it is, but COVID meant that most of the poorer countries were struggling to meet their budgets on health and education. And now to say that, yes, climate finance is going to come, but it's going to come in the form of an interest-bearing loan is just not acceptable. But that is all that the rich countries are willing to give you, okay? So, in some sense, colonialism was overthrown with decolonization, at least nominally, but climate change has brought colonialism back to the forefront. Okay, so one last example that I gave, and there are two sections of this, which is the Europeans have proposed something called CBAM. So, when you read this, so there is a mechanism called the border carbon adjustment, and CBAM is a specific carbon border adjustment mechanism. Okay, so they are the same thing. BCA or CBAM is the same thing. So CBAM is the Europeans, for the time being, have identified 5 sectors where they will levy tariffs according to the differences in carbon content in these sectors. So, steel, Chinese steel, Russian steel, they will say has paid $5 carbon tax, whereas the Europeans pay $30. So we will levy a tariff of $25. Okay. So this is, there are two problems with this that I highlight, and I will quickly breeze through those. The first is the problem of measurement. Okay. Which are the goods you will target? If these are going to be consumer goods finally, so and how much carbon is there in milk production? How much carbon is there in cut fruit production? Not very easy. So for the time being, it's steel, cement, carbon, hydrogen, etc. So these are very easily identifiable. But if they were to ask the Chinese that, how much carbon is there, and if they don't accept the Chinese version of the story, then what will they do? They will ask for detailed production mechanism, the production plan from the Chinese. Now, if you think you could ask the Europeans to give you the detailed production plans, that's clearly not going to happen. They will say, no, these are industrial secrets. You will run away with our industrial secrets. But they can, with a straight face, ask you to provide all the details so that they can do their calculations. Okay. So that's point number one. Measurement is a nightmare. So it's and it's going to be more hairy, once you start looking at how electricity was produced, which went into its production. So that's going to be a nightmare. The second thing is that there is after the Second World War, there was the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, which then became the WTO, the World Trade Organization. These are completely rich men's club. So at that time, the IMF, the World Bank, the Americans wanted all the third world countries to do free trade. Don't interfere with free trade. Okay, and what concerns me here is that that the WTO was very clear, and I've given at least one quotation, I think, in the text, where I say that the WTO said, okay, we are not interested in environmental issues. The process of production is not what interests us. Okay, so we are going to only deal with the product and not the process of production. Okay, so if this is a pen, then are you levying a tariff on this pen, not how this pen was produced? Okay, now the world is when it suits them, they say that okay, free trade is optimal for everyone. When it suits them, the rich countries, the free trade is thrown out of the window, completely out. Now, everything is determined by the carbon content of production. Okay, so I describe that as lexicographic preferences. Lexicographic is when you open a dictionary, you first look at the letter C, and then you go down the C. So this is, they have decided initially it was all free trade. You had to adjust to free trade. Now it is all carbon. You have to adjust to carbon. We have no say in the matter. Okay. And I've given examples. One good example is that the CBAM, the Europeans want us to reduce carbon in steel and cement and these other goods. And they say that, oh, there's too much carbon in these, and so you have to pay a tax. But when look at the Chinese electric vehicles, they are the cheapest in the world, very good for the environment, running and for running. And the Europeans say, no, it's too cheap. There is we will levy a tariff on that. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say one set of products has too much carbon, therefore we will levy a tariff, and the other set of products has too little carbon, we will levy a tariff. But duplicity is very much part of the game. So where are we? We are in a Hamza Alavi setting. We are in what I think. I can't say that he would have liked my lecture, but he would have liked the thrust of my lecture. That look, there is decolonization, but the colonial powers never went home. They were very much around. Okay, and we are still in thrall. We are still, held by the colonial powers in the way the world functions. And finally, in what I have discussed, what the brief biography that was read out on Hamza Alavi, that there is very little discussion on what happens within the country, but that's central. It's central because in our countries, whether it's Pakistan or India, there are large number of people who are very wealthy and who lead North American lifestyles. So it is not just good enough to criticize the North Americans as North Americans, but also this, for want of a better word, this comprador class, which aspires to North American lifestyles. I have seen a Rolls-Royce waiting at a traffic light near my house. It was not moving because I think in front of it there was a bullock cart. So it was, but the Rolls-Royce had to be flaunted, and that is what they were doing. So, there are lots of political economy questions that I do deal with, but there are an equal number of political economy questions that I cannot deal with in the course of one paper and one talk. So let me stop here. I thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing. It helps that, I can't hear what the audience is saying, but please, thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps another title could have also been chosen for your talk, which would have been Might is Right, which continues to be the case, as you had shown. Your talk also told us that the often made claim that we are all in it together is both true and false. It is true to the extent that the effects of climate change are felt by all of us, but it is not true to the extent of those who have created the problem in the first place and to the extent that those who suffer from it. Your analysis was broadly at the national level, but of course, if we then bring in the question of ethnicity and gender, the intersectionality of this suffering becomes even more problematic and painful. Your talk was also a very good example of what we were talking earlier, that we need a language, concepts, and ideas to make sense of what we are experiencing. And you provided us with the language of political economy, history, and economy to make sense of it. So thank you very much, sir, for this very thought-provoking talk. We have some 20 minutes left, and I want to leave some of it for Dr. Tahira Khan to give her presidential concluding remarks and for Kaleem Durrani to say a few words. So we still have about 15 minutes or so for some question answers. So if anybody has question, and I would request that to be a question, though always there's a temptation to say more, but a precise question will help us take as many as possible. So while the audience is thinking about a question, Professor, may I ask you a question? You in the text as well in your presentation, you talked about the international you talked about inequities, but I believe, and you probably started to touch upon it right at the end, that there are also intra-national inequities. We can also think of within a country like Pakistan or India, that some people are more responsible than others. Some groups are more responsible for climate change effects than others, and some suffer more than others. So if I may request you to just briefly throw some light on this relationship between international inequities and intranational inequities.
Okay. Thank you for that question, because it's something I would much rather that you hadn't asked, but I will do my best. And also your comment, that when I was writing this paper, I thought the title of a possible title of the paper could be Climate Colonialism. But that sounds very sort of almost scaremongering that I'm pushing a line. So I think I just chose to be a little neutral as a sort of professional economist, but make the same point. Huh? So I come to the same conclusion that there is climate colonialism, but I didn't put it in the title. So might is right is absolutely correct. So and what I talked about at the very end in the WTO context, free trade is something that we don't really discuss properly, because free trade allows the in the old days the rich in poor countries had a lifestyle which was extravagant, but a lot of it was just domestic produce and maybe some trinkets from abroad or something like that. But now with the new technology, in India, certainly, I think people look down at you if you got your son married in Delhi. Huh? The wedding has to be in Italy or Turkey or some place like that. Now, so in the world, and third world, I'm talking about now. I don't, we know about the advanced capitalist countries, but even in the third world, income inequalities are so great, and that are fed by consumption, which is international. So, and these have carbon footprints. I mean, if you had hundreds and hundreds of Indians getting their offsprings married in Turkey, it is affecting the carbon emissions. There's just no getting away from that. So the unequal distribution of income has a lot to do with, and I can think of other better examples, a lot to do with climate change. So if the same income was more equitably distributed, then climate change, its contribution to climate change would be less. So the international political economy structure, the World Bank, the IMF wants liberalization. Let the rich get richer is not a problem, and then that generates a consumption pattern which then has implications for climate change. There are no two ways about it. China, if you look at China's contribution to climate change, it depends a lot whether you are looking at Chinese consumption or Chinese production. Chinese production, a lot of Chinese production is for consumption elsewhere, whereas Chinese consumption is much less than the Chinese production of carbon dioxide. So therefore, what the production structure is, how the returns of production are appropriated by the various classes are very central to the story. And there are some co-authors of mine in Europe who are very concerned with this also. A young Frenchman, he has a movement to force various countries to at least sign up to having an international wealth tax, because he believes that will help the climate problem. So, and the fact inequalities are central to the climate problem is undeniable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have a question here? Ji, Shima, please. Yes, I think a mic is on the way.
Thank you, Partha, for this very insightful talk. It cleared up so many webs in my mind about the whole thing. There are two things that I want you to briefly elaborate on. One is when you say that 79% of the carbon emissions are from the developed nations. Na? So, and then you later on you say, okay, the average person in high-income countries emits more than 30 times as much. If you can just elaborate on that, just for my own clarity. And one more thing I want to ask about, and that is when you do suggest, that how do we in our countries, like in India and Pakistan, how do we fight this climate change? What do we need to do?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Shima. So I should have emphasized this more. Actually, I thought when I was writing it, one of the better things that I got into the text was that carbon dioxide once emitted, some of it dissipates over time, but it stays in the atmosphere for 1,000 years. Okay, so therefore, if you are going to apportion blame for climate change, then you have to say look at not only who is emitting carbon dioxide today, but what happened 1,000 years ago. Now, the way I have posed the problem is that before 1750s, there's no need to go back because there was very little carbon dioxide. So, but we have to go back to the 1750s to see who is responsible for the problem today. And I liked my own thing that methane is a very lethal thing. Methane actually is much worse for climate change, but it lasts in the atmosphere only for 12 years. So therefore, if methane was the bigger contributor, then you didn't have to go back 1,000 years in history. You could have just gone back 12 years in history. Huh? So, I mean, it's those 12 years could be lethal, right? I mean, 1248, the Abbasids got knocked over by the Huns, but, by the Mongols. So, and it was a very short thing, but it had long-term consequences. But you see what I'm trying to say, that one lives in the atmosphere for long, the other is very short-lived. So therefore, we have to look at carbon dioxide, and therefore we have to, when we are looking for the usual suspects in this case, we have to go back 200 years. And therefore, there is no way that the Europeans can scientifically deny that they are not responsible for this problem. Okay. Now, China is the country which muddies this, because China has come on the scene very late. 1979, it was still, more or less like India, but it has industrialized so quickly that its emissions today are the same as the European emissions, and cumulative emissions also are quite, per capita emissions are also quite high. So, I mean, emissions are it's number one country in the world, but cumulative emissions are about the same as the Europeans. So China is a different class. But other than that, the rest of the colonial powers, there's no way that you can let them off the hook. Okay. The second thing is that, look, if you are very poor, and I think that, if you're talking about the Pakistan peasantry, for instance, there is no way that you can allow someone to browbeat you into saying that don't use steam power, don't use petrol, because it is creating problems for the climate. That's not true. But my own position on India, for instance, and it doesn't make me popular here, is to say that India produces a lot of electricity from thermal power, and I think it can actually do better. It can actually go to cleaner sources of power. There are costs associated with that. You might need to change your grid structure and things like that, but you can do something. But don't let the poor take the rap for what the rich have created for 200 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more questions we can perhaps take? Okay, we'll do one more. Any possible one from the back? That would be good. Yes.
Hi, Professor. This is Kushbak Fatima from Aga Khan University. I really appreciate what a fruitful session it was. So I really want you to highlight for us as a university students, like we have so many ideas in our mind. How can we actually practically implement these ideas for climate change? How can we address these, and what kind of approaches we can use, and what skills are actually required for us, which can actually help us in future to deal with these climate changes?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much for that question, because you see, I should have talked about that. If you look at my presentation, and if you ask me that all the areas that I have touched upon, am I an expert in all of them? Clearly, no. I mean, climate science, I know just about the bare minimum to get a broad understanding. And there is economics, there are lots of issues there. But I think, I take heart from the fact that once I started taking up this position, I have had lots of Europeans, young European students like yourself, in Pakistan, but European students, 2 German students and all, and they don't talk after my presentation. So I have to badger them and say that, what did you think of my presentation? And both of them said that, we came to this conference thinking that Europe was doing the right thing, but now I'm not so clear. Okay. Last week I had an email, a message from a lady. She's older, probably in her 40s, and she works for environmental NGOs. I mean, she has worked for a number of NGOs, and she said that, look, I also thought that the Europeans were very good. They were the cat's whiskers. But after having read your argument, I am not so sure anymore. Now, I think the important thing is to keep on hammering this. Intellectual discussion may actually not get you all the way to a solution, but it's very important. That's why I have spent about 3 or 4 pages discussing the WTO. You can say that, oh, this WTO is a white man's forum. Why are we dealing with it? But that's where you have to deal with them. So it's very important to know that the WTO, what quote unquote the white man created, is not compatible with their position today. So are you telling us that, that was the flavor of the week and it's now changed? So, there are lots of things. I would be happy if you sent me an email to discuss this one-on-one with you.
Great. We'll take last question, particularly if it's from the other side of the room. Yes, we can arrange for it. Yes. Any last question? Yes,
thank
sir.
you so much, sir, for your approach, for your focus on the South Asian region. My question to you is that Pakistan is like a very low carbon utilizing country. So what strategies can we use to solve issues related to climate change, and how can we focus on climate adaptation and mitigation policies? Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, if you're not emitting too much carbon, then the mitigation burden is that much less. And I go back to what I said about Shima. It's a question that, the poor peasantry cannot, a peasant household cannot afford natural gas for cooking. So they will use things which will emit carbon. You cannot ask them to tighten their belts because they, they have no waste left. So where will they tighten the belt? Now, I think in a paper that I wrote recently, a blog, I highlighted this fact that, look at Pakistan. Pakistan, much less than India, is not responsible for the climate problem at all. And yet it was hit by these floods. Okay, it will be hit by other things, the erosion of the sea coast. If the rivers emanating in the mountains, they start to dry up. So it will be hit in various ways, which are not related to your emissions. They are related to world emissions. Okay, so therefore, what Pakistan needs is a robust support of adaptation and loss and damage, because you are being hit by things that you did not have anything to do with in creating. So that's why Baku was very disappointing, but Baku, at least the developing countries, posed the problem correctly.
Thank you very much. Now we come towards the end. I will now request Dr. Tahira S. Khan to come here and provide us with her last presidential comments.
इर्तिका के साथियों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, उन्होंने मुझे ये एजाज़ दिया है. Formally, I was presiding this session, so this is a very heavy word. Presidential system इस मुल्क में पता नहीं किस तरह के presidents आते हैं, किसी की power ज़्यादा होती है, किसी की कम होती है. I don't know. I don't want to use power at all. I just want to share something which I got out of this wonderful talk, and I want to share with you. So it's not a presidential talk. तो comrades, I mean, इर्तिका के साथियों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, especially आप लोगों का, आप लोगों ने, नई नस्ल ने जो patience दिखाया है. ये interesting भी है. This topic is very interesting. Climate change, it has become, actually, let me tell you, it has become a buzzword also. Like the different terms, different concepts, they come and go. I'm sure it has to stay here because it is, I mean, in our safety and security, we have to keep on talking about that. But all of a sudden, I mean, this word, we got used to this word, but definitely without even this word, mentioning it, we have been suffering from the impacts of climate change, global warming, ozone layer thinning, lots of things. I grew up with all these different phases of climate change. So, but Partha ji ne, we were very actually looking forward to meet him in person, but the economic, political problems as such, delay in the visa. So I'm not going to repeat that. So, but really an honor to meet Partha ji, even online. Someday we are going to get together and have more insight from him on this topic. And the point, I mean, when he was speaking, when I was reading his lecture, it was so much so related with the name, with the work of the personality, Hamza Alavi, that how he was choosing that framework which Partha ji is choosing to explain climate change, but with his own innovation and interpretation and through his own lived experience of his life in South Asia. And it's so relevant to us whether it's सरहद के उस पार है या सरहद के इस पार, हवा तो एक ही है, वो कभी इधर को चलती है कभी उधर को चलती है, वो अपने साथ क्या लेके जाती है क्या लेके आती है वो उसको हम रोक नहीं सकते। हम बॉर्डर पे खड़े होते हैं, वाघा बॉर्डर के ऊपर, हमें वो भी आवाज़ें अपनी जैसी लगती हैं, उनको हमारी आवाज़ें भी हमारे जैसी उनके जैसी लगती हैं, वो उसी हवा में सांस ले रहे होते हैं जिसमें हम होते हैं। लेकिन द इशू इज के हम ये सियासी इख्तलाफात की वजह से इकट्ठे मिल नहीं बैठ सकते इन मसाइल का हल इख्तियार सोचने के लिए। मैं कुछ ज़्यादा नहीं कहूँगी, इतनी जामे और इतना वाजे पॉइंट्स पार्था जी ने हमारे साथ शेयर किए हैं कि किस तरह से 18वीं 19वीं सदी में जब फ्यूडलिज्म, जब जागीरदाराना निज़ाम टूट रहा था वेस्ट में, सरमायादारी निज़ाम उभर रहा था, सरमायादारी निज़ाम के साथ साथ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन, जिस तरह से फॉसिल फ्यूल्स का इस्तेमाल शुरू हुआ इंडस्ट्री में, ये सारी चीज़ें मैं रिपीट नहीं करूँगी, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ जो तकलीफ दे चीज़ हुई इंसानियत के लिए वो ये हुई कि कॉलोनियलिज्म, नौबाती निज़ाम, सियासी और मिलिट्री नौबाती निज़ाम फैला और उसने वो रिसोर्सेज चूज़ किए जो हम अपनी लिविंग के लिए यूज़ करते थे। उन्होंने हमारी चीज़ें अपने यहाँ ले जाके पैदा करके उनको प्रोडक्ट बना के हमें बेचा, लेकिन आज हम खुद ही उगा रहे हैं, खुद ही बना रहे हैं, खुद ही एमिशन सह रहे हैं, खुद ही फॉसिल फ्यूल्स का धुआं निकल रहे हैं, लेकिन हम फिनिश प्रोडक्ट उनको दे रहे हैं। पार्था जी ने तारीखी तजिए से हमें ये सारे मसाइल तो समझा दिए हैं, लेकिन हम सब इन सारे मसाइल से गुजर रहे हैं और इसको अभी भी समझने में यंग जनरेशन भी, और मेरा ख्याल है कि मैं पाकिस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात करूंगी कि अभी भी कुछ लोगों से बात करें तो वो बहुत नॉन सीरियस तरीके से इस चीज़ को ले रहे हैं कि भाई उनके इर्द गिर्द की तो हवा साफ है, या मतलब वो इमेजिन करते हैं, या उनको तो वो सारी फैसिलिटीज़ अवेलेबल है जिसके लिए एक इंसान तगोदो करता है। पार्था जी ने सारा क्लास तजिया उसके लिए किया कि मतलब अगर डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग्स होती हैं वहाँ पे, तो पाकिस्तान से भी डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग्स होती हैं। अब यहाँ पे किसी शादी हॉल में शादी करना उस पर्टिकुलर क्लास के लिए जो उस क्लास से जुड़ी हुई है, जो यूरोप अमेरिका में बैठी है, उनके लिए अब ये बड़ा छोटी सी बात लगती है कि अगर वो पाकिस्तान में शादी करें। उसके अलावा उनकी गाड़ियाँ, ये सारे मसाइल पार्था जी हमारे यहाँ भी उसी तरह से हैं। गधा गाड़ी के पीछे एक BMW या मर्सिडीज भी आपको नजर आएगी। समरी ऑफ द नेगोशिएशन, आपने जो बताया हमें, यू हैव समड अप द टर्म्स, कॉन्सेप्ट्स एंड न्यू टेक्निकल लैंग्वेज जो आज यूज हो रही है इंटरनेशनल लिटरेचर में, which the West is giving to us. We are using the same language. We are not coming up with our own language. My point here is that they want us to use their language and follow their strategies to tackle the problems which they have created. And they teach us to recycle. The South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we were already in a recycling culture. We were already living in that recycle culture. Our older generations were not wasting anything. They were reusing, they were washing and reusing those things. We were not familiar with the concept of disposable glass, disposable water, disposable anything disposable. So they teach us to reduce the solid waste. We have had we were the minimum producer of the solid waste. We means the South Asia and the rest of the third world countries. Who uses disposable items? Who made disposable items? Who uses plastic products? Who made plastic products? and who bottled our water, which we were using either in matti ka glass or stainless steel ka, or chale glass mein glass, शीशे का glass. अब हमें डिस्पोजेबल ग्लास मिलता है और डिस्पोजेबल बॉटल मिलती है. Then they are telling us disposable bottles need to be recycled. They tell us that, oh, beautiful, you know, that nation, I mean, they have 3 boxes of trash and 1 box is for plastic items. So plastic items, oh, you people are so ignorant that you burn, you dispose your kachra, your trash together with the plastic and the other items. So these are the, when that kachra is burnt, उसकी जो गैसेस निकलती हैं, जो उससे धुआं निकलता है, वो कितना खतरनाक है. लेकिन ये प्लास्टिक हमारी प्रोडक्ट तो नहीं था. They tell us not to burn कचरा. वो और अगर कचरा बर्न करना है तो उसको सेपरेटली एक स्पेशल जगह पे किया जाए. ये सारे ऊंचों के, ये सारे अमीरों के नखरे होते हैं. गरीब ने तो कचरा फेंकना है. उसके कचरे की नेचर आपकी डेवलपमेंट की वजह से चेंज हो गई है. दे डोंट मेंशन about the technology waste, about the medical waste, what is created, how do they dispose of. आज एक फोन आता है, कल दूसरा लैपटॉप आता है, परसों तीसरा हेडफोन आता है. Where do the old items go? Where are they dumped? वो किसके कोस्ट पे डंप किए जा रहे हैं? उनको कौन, उन अफ्रीका के कोस्ट पे बच्चे जो उस टेक्नोलॉजिकल वेस्ट के साथ खेल रहे होते हैं, उनके अंदर किस किस्म के, या वो बर्न करके उसमें से मेटल निकाल रहे होते हैं, वो किसने वो उसको क्रिएट किया या पैदा किया, कोई बात नहीं करता. I wonder personally, if I have 2011 phone and I don't want to buy a phone of, the 11 model of iPhone, and I don't want to buy 16 because I think, okay, what am I going to do with this phone? And if something goes wrong, nobody is going to use it. It's going to go in kachra. So no one talks about that. No one talks about medical waste, disposable items. They want consumers to buy new items which they create, they make money, and then they want consumer to throw it away. So the hyper consumerism has been created, and the result is too much trash, too much kachra all over the world, and they're part of the world also, but they know smartly how to dispose it off. They don't talk about how that hardware is disposed of. Where does that waste go and where are they dumping it? So on and on, this is new generation's responsibility कि ये क्वेश्चन करें उन कॉन्सेप्ट्स को, उस हिस्ट्री को, उस तरक्की को, उस डेवलपमेंट को, जो we are being told that development model we need to follow to grow, to develop, but that model is giving us what? So in the end, this young generation needs to question it. So in the end, I will say that Partha ji's presentation shows a picture of a global village, एक बड़ा सा दुनिया गांव है, where the West is the Chaudhary, the Vadera, the landlord, and we all are the masses, the developing countries, the third world countries. ये हम सारी रियाया हैं. उधर से जो मिलता है, चाहे वो कॉन्सेप्ट मिलेंगे, चाहे वो प्रोडक्ट मिलेगी, एंड वी आर गोइंग टू गेट दैट. वी हैव नो चॉइस. दे आर dictating us how to tackle our issues even today, and the mess which they have created, that how to clear that mess. यानी शुरू में मैंने पार्था जी से क्विकली एक बात की थी कि करें वो और भरे हम. एक बात, और दूसरी बात, बिलीव में कि ये मैंने टर्म, पार्था जी ने ये टर्म यूज की है, क्लाइमेट colonialism. Very much we are in climate colonialism. Political colonialism is gone, but climate colonialism has emerged, and on all climatic problems, we have to take dictations from our climate lords, from our climate masters. So now they are the ruling class. They are the one who are telling the masses, वो अपनी रियाया को बताते हैं कि आपने ये करना है. The most important point in the end, with Partha ji has mentioned, is the class alliance. Our class has deep alliance with the upper class. Our upper class has deep alliance with the upper class of the West. So through our upper class, चाहे वो political elite हो, चाहे वो economic elite हो, they are ruling us here. So we are living in a new form of climatically colonized world. How to decolonize ourselves? It is a duty of the younger generation and of course ours also. Thank you.
Kaleem sir, may I request you for some words of thanks? And I will take your leave. Thank you very much for being here. मुझे नहीं मालूम कि मैं पार्था का शुक्रिया किस तरह से अदा करूं। मैं उन तमाम सियासी जो दायरे हैं जिनमें हमारे ममालिक आते हैं उनका एहतराम करता हूं, लेकिन इस हकीकत से कोई इनकार नहीं कर सकता कि लफ्ज़ जो सब कॉन्टिनेंट की इस्तिलाह इस्तेमाल होती है, काबुल से लेकर और ढाका तक, ये सारा रीजन एक है, इसके मसाइल भी एक हैं और इसके मसाइल को जुदा जुदा सियासी दायरों में रह कर के ना समझा जा सकता है और ना हल किया जा सकता है। पार्था, आप लोगों ने कहा पार्था जी, मुझे कहने दीजिए पार्था। पार्था ने जिस तरह से पार्था के यहाँ पर बुलाए जाने का मकसद भी यही था कि जो काम, जो रिसर्च वर्क इस पूरे रीजन में मुख्तलिफ लोग कर रहे हैं, वो काम जो है वो हम आपस में एक दूसरे के साथ शेयर कर सकें। हमारी नौजवान नस्ल जो है, इन तमाम लोगों के किए हुए, जो हमारे सामने इतने सीनियर्स बैठे हुए हैं जिन्होंने सारी दुनिया में पढ़ा है, पढ़ाया है, रिसर्च का काम किया है, आज भी रिसर्च का काम कर रहे हैं और स्टूडेंट्स के साथ उनका अपना एक लाइव जो है वो कांटेक्ट है जिसमें हम सीखने और समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। क्योंकि ये बात अभी डॉक्टर ताहिरा ने कही कि ये क्लास का मामला है, इससे पहले जो है वो पार्था ने भी यही कहा था कि ये क्लास का मामला है। इसमें क्लास स्ट्रगल भी उसी तरह से शामिल है जिस तरह से कि ये साउथ और नॉर्थ का मसला है, उसमें क्लासेस को अब आप भूल नहीं सकते, आप अलग नहीं कर सकते। क्योंकि मैं उस तफसील में नहीं जाऊंगा, अभी डॉक्टर ताहिरा ने उस पर काफ़ी तफसील से गुफ्तगू की। मेरा कहने का मतलब सिर्फ ये है कि डॉक्टर पार्था और उनके कलीग और उनके दोस्त, हमारे यहाँ से हमारे दोस्त और कलीग, ये हम एक दूसरे के मुल्कों में आना जाना शुरू करें। इन पर कदगने जो हैं वो कम हों, ख़त्म हों, ना रहें, ये हमारी ख्वाहिश है। और मैं इस बात के कहने में कोई आर महसूस नहीं करता हूँ कि डॉक्टर पार्था किसी वजह से नहीं पहुँच सके। लेकिन अगर ये देखा जाए तो हमारी जो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इंटीरियर है और जो वीज़ा सेक्शन से मुताल्लिक़ हिंदुस्तान में जो लोग हैं, उन तमाम लोगों ने पार्था साहब के आने के लिए अपनी तमाम तर कोशिशें जो है वो हमारे साथ जोड़े रखी। यानी ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि हमने ये महसूस किया हो कि इन लोगों के आने पर कोई पाबंदी जो है वो हो सकती है। पूरी तरह से हमारी कोशिश, पार्था सहन की कोशिश और दोनों तरफ के जो सरकारी इदारे हैं उसमें ये था कि ये यहाँ आ जाएंगे। तो हमें यकीन है, हमें उम्मीद है कि हम जो हैं वो पार्था को अपने दरमियान में दोबारा जो है वो फिज़िकली मौजूद पाएंगे। इनके साथ हम बहुत सारी बातें करेंगे, बहुत सारा वक्त गुजारेंगे और सीखेंगे। सिर्फ सीखेंगे नहीं बल्कि हम इस रीजन में जो कुछ भी जानते हैं वो हम उसे शेयर करेंगे ताकि वो अपनी रिसर्च में उन मौज़ूआत को, उन पहलुओं को भी जो है ले सकें। इससे ज़्यादा मुझे कुछ नहीं कहना है और मुझे आप लोगों ने मौका दिया, बहुत शुक्रिया। मैं आपसे कहूँगा प्लीज़ डॉक्टर रियाज, प्लीज़ 2 मिनट के लिए आइए, प्लीज़ 2 मिनट के लिए आइए। डॉक्टर पार्था सेन चूंकि यहाँ पर नहीं आए हैं, लिहाजा हम उन्हें शील्ड नहीं देंगे।
दिखा दीजिए।
डॉक्टर ताहिरा के लिए और डॉक्टर फरीद के लिए ज़ैबिस्ट यूनिवर्सिटी के बच्चों ने जो है वो एक शील्ड का इंतज़ाम किया है, तो मैं उनसे कहूँगा कि प्लीज़ आइए और आ जाएं, आ जाएं।
डॉक्टर फरीद पंजानी।
डॉक्टर फरीद, ये इनको कहाँ हटा दिया है? यही तो कह रहे हैं भाई, ये क्यों हटा दिया? उनको नजर आ रहा है। अच्छा अच्छा, बीच में ठीक ठीक, इनको वो भी करनी है। बस मैं आखिर में सबका शुक्रिया अदा करूंगा, और ये आप यकीन रखिए कि हम अपनी आदत से बाज नहीं आएंगे। ये हमारा 23वां हमजा अलवी डिस्टिंग्विश लेक्चर था। इसका मतलब है 23 साल से, चाहे कोविड हो या सैलाब आए, हम अपना हमजा अलवी डिस्टिंग्विश लेक्चर जो है वो करते ही करते हैं। आइंदा अब देखिए कौन सी यूनिवर्सिटी हमें बुलाती है, फिर हम आप सबको दावत देंगे कि आप वहाँ पर आइए और किसी नए स्कॉलर से नई बात सीख सकें। और मुझे यकीन है कि जिन बच्चों ने यहाँ सवाल किया है, आपके लेक्चर्स में वो पैनलिस्ट के तौर पर हमारे साथ मौजूद होंगे। बेइंतहा शुक्रिया इर्तिका इंस्टीट्यूट की जानिब से।
Students, you are requested to be seated, please. Please do not leave the hall. Guests are requested to please join us for tea at cafeteria.
डॉक्टर पारसा को ज़ैबिस्ट की तरफ से शुक्रिया अदा कर दें ताकि वो जाएं।
Dr. Partha Sen, thank you so much for joining us today here in Pakistan from India. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Students, please do not leave the hall. Kindly be seated.